The story continues with Cain fighting a dragon, and he defeats it with a single strike. Cain can't believe that it's really dead, and he then checks his stats. He notices that he has over 80 million magic points, and he has received the titles Enemy of All Monsters and Dragon Killer. The scene then changes, and 2 years after his training with his tutors, Cain is heading to the royal capital to make his debut. Cain is now 10 years old, and Rain mentions that she can't wait to live with Cain in the capital. She tells him to start attending the school right now, and her father then mentions that Cain can't attend the academy until he is 12. Cain then asks Rain if she is excited about attending the academy, and she mentions that she will take the top position in the exams. Cain then asks how long it will take for them to reach the capital, and Gar mentions that it will take them 1 week if they don't encounter any monsters on the way. Cain then searches for monsters using his search skill, and he tells his father that there is a battle going on 3 kilometers ahead of them. He mentions that a few dozen monsters are swarming 10 people, and Garm tells the knights to move faster. Cain mentions that the knights won't make it in time, and he decides to go himself. He uses wind magic to travel fast, and the scene cuts to some knights battling orcs. The knights are on the verge of losing, and Cain then intervenes, and he starts fighting the orcs. Cain defeats the orcs easily with the use of his magic and sword skills, and he also defeats the orc general. Cain then introduces himself to the knights, as the third son of Margrave Cain von Silford, and the knights from the Margraves group also arrive at the scene. They notice that the monsters are already dead, and Cain uses healing magic to heal all the knights. Cain then stores all the dead soldiers in his item box, and Garm arrives there. Garm notices the crest of Duke Santana on the carriage that the knights were protecting, and Princess Telestia and Lady Silk come out of the carriages. Garm mentions that he is glad to see that they are safe, and the ladies thank them for saving their lives. They are curious about Cain, and he introduces himself to them. Princess Telestia then suffers from a headache, and Cain asks her permission to calm her mind using magic. The princess permits him, and Cain uses his relax spell to calm both of their minds. The spell makes their hearts feel lighter, and all of their pain and exhaustion disappears. They both feel relaxed, and the princess then thanks Cain for saving their lives, and Lady Silk does the same. Silk mentions that she saw him through the window, and both his magic and swordsmanship were amazing. The princess and Lady Silk then fight over Cain, and Silk asks him what brings him out here. Cain mentions that he was on his way to the capital for his debut, and the ladies mention that they were also on their way to their debuts. They invite Cain to travel with them, and they take him to their carriage, and they leave. While in the carriage, Cain thinks that this is too cramped, and he asks them if he can sit on the other side. The girls mention that they are scared and they would feel safer if he is by their side. The princess then asks Cain to call her Tellies, and Lady Silk also asks him to call her Silk. Cain hesitates as they are both ladies of noble status higher than his own, but the girls still insist, and Cain has no choice but to do as they say. The guard then interrupts them, and he mentions that they are approaching the town of Renoma, and they should prepare to disembark. Cain asks him if he saw all that, and the guard mentions that he did, and Cain gets embarrassed. After arriving at the town, Cain tells them that he will see them tomorrow, and the princess mentions that she wants to be with him tonight as well. Lady Silk states the same, and Garm then intervenes, and he mentions that it won't be appropriate for a boy and a girl to share a room. The princess then mentions that the sight of the horrific things that happened today won't leave her mind, and Lady Silk wonders what they will do if monsters attack them during night. Garm mentions that he can arrange a maid for them, and Lady Silk mentions that Cain is the strongest person here, and the princess wants Cain to protect them. The ladies then ask Cain if he doesn't want to share a room with them, and Cain hesitantly agrees, but he states that their room should be large. Garm then tells Cain to act with prudence, and the girls are happy to share a room with Cain. The scene cuts to them arriving at their room, and the princess asks Cain if she could sleep next to him. Lady Silk asks the same thing, and the princess then mentions that Cain would have to sleep in the middle. Both Lady Silk and the princess then move their beds closer to Cain's, and Cain mentions that they should put the beds back to normal. The girls mention that nights are scary and they are afraid of the monsters, and they won't be able to sleep if they aren't close to him. Cain tries to refuse them, but it's no use, and he has no choice but to give in to their selfish demands. The next day Cain thinks that he wasn't able to sleep at all last night, and he mentions that he also spent the next few days without any sleep. After a few more days they arrive at the royal capital, and a knight welcomes them back. He notices that the girls are linking hands with a boy, and the girls mention that Cain saved them. The knight recognizes his name, and he introduces himself as Diam, the vice-captain of the Royal Chivalric Order. He mentions that the knights have already explained everything to him, and he thanks Cain for protecting the princess and the lady. The scene changes and Cain takes out the fallen soldiers from his item box. Diam thanks him for bringing them back, and he mentions that they normally have to burn their bodies where they fall, but thanks to Cain they will be able to return them to their families. Cain mentions that these soldiers fought their hardest to protect the two ladies, and Diam mentions that he will make sure to tell everyone that their efforts were not in vain. Diam then tells Cain that the king wants to have an audience with him, and the scene changes to Cain entering the throne room. The minister tells the court that the princess and Lady Silk were attacked by a group of 50 orcs on their way to the capital, and Cain saved them by eliminating all of them single-handedly. The nobles in the court find it hard to believe that a youngster like Cain was able to achieve all this. The king then commends Cain for a job well done, and he promotes Cain to the rank of baron. He also grants him 10 platinum coins and a mansion. A noble named Corgino then objects to this, and he mentions that they can't grant peerage to a 10-year-old. The king mentions that they can't keep such a talented man in a powerless position, and his decision will not be changed. Corgino then withdraws, and the king asks Cain if he will accept this reward. Cain thinks that he doesn't have a choice, and he accepts it with gratitude. The audience then ends, and the king invites Cain to the parlor. At the parlor, Garm states that he never expected Cain to be granted peerage, and the king then enters the room. The king and the duke then thank Cain for saving their daughters, and the duke introduces himself as Silk's father Eric von Santana. Garm then states that he thought that only minors who lost their parents are allowed to receive peerage at a young age, and the king mentions that since Cain excels in both magic and swordsmanship, it wouldn't be right for the kingdom to leave him to his own devices. The king mentions that he will be receiving pay according to his status, and he states that he can ask Garm if he has any questions about the nobility. The king and the duke then ask Cain to take the hand of their daughters in marriage, and he states that they won't be formally married until they reach adulthood, but for now they can be engaged. Cain wonders why, and the king and the duke mention that Cain linked arms with their daughters, and they also slept in the same room. They mention that nobody will take them as brides after this, and the story goes back in time by a bit. We see that the king and the others are discussing what to do with Cain, and the minister suggests the idea of granting him peerage. He mentions that making him stand on his own will show them who he truly is, and after hearing that the young ladies are smitten with him, the king decides to make him their fiancé. He mentions that he will do everything he can to keep Cain in this kingdom, and the story returns to the present. The king and the duke ask Cain to take responsibility for his actions, and Cain agrees to the engagement, seeing no other way out of the situation. The ladies then mention that they will never forget the nights that they spent together, and the king asks Cain what he did with them. They ask Cain to show some discretion, and Cain apologizes. Thanks for watching part 3, the rest of the parts will be on my channel.